During the Civil War, we had veterans from both sides that had experienced the war, the horrors of the war, the death, the destruction. Given what we had in those days, we didn't have psychiatric medicine, we didn't have psychology. They took all these symptoms and they decided to call it soldier's heart. During World War I, they decided to call it shell shock.
A very famous case of a shell shock victim is Wilfred Owen, who wrote a poem called Mental Cases, in which he looks at shell shock. He describes them with horrific detail. These minds of these men have been ravished by death, that they've witnessed murders, multitudinous murders. And in the case of Vietnam, if the soldiers come back and are not welcomed, a friend of mine put it this way. He said that soldiers from previous wars came home and were absolved of their sins by a grateful nation. The soldiers of Vietnam received no such absolution.
But it's actually interesting that the word PTSD didn't actually come in until the early 1980s. Now, the war in Vietnam had been over for 5 years and we were still struggling. We were looking at these young men, what in the heck are we dealing with here?
Post-traumatic stress disorder, it became part of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders in 1980, and that kind of put PTSD in the field of traumatology on the map. It was the first time it was ever acknowledged and published, in a format that led credibility to the field.
That is a common concern among servicemen who have developed nervous conditions during their stay in the Army as to what the public is going to think about them. Undoubtedly, there will be people on the outside who won't have any understanding of the condition, who may think of it as being a rather shameful condition. If a civilian, the average civilian, were subjected to similar stresses, he undoubtedly would have developed the same type of nervous condition that most of you fellows developed. All of us have our so-called breaking point.